Welcome back. It's good to see you. I just thought we needed a bit of Africa in the room, you know. When we call a meeting at home, we start with music. So welcome back. It's good to have you all here. We have a very exciting panel discussion coming up. We are running a bit late in the start, but I hope we will make up the time. But I still hope that we will be able to have a participatory and inclusive discussion. This topic that we're going to be discussing in this panel is important within the framework of the African Union-European Union partnership, especially within the flagship program of a global gateway. So we're going to try and make sure that our panelists share their experiences, answer some questions from you, inspire you to find ways to participate and collaborate with each other. Just to give you an idea how the session is going to go, we're going to break it up into 5 parts. In the first part, I'm going to ask you to tell us something. I want us to start by listening to you. In the second part, we're going to have a short keynote presentation from the Director General of Development Cooperation and Humanitarian Aid. In the third part, we're going to see a practical example of a project that has been implemented. In the fourth part, I will have a quick question and answer with the panelists. I see they're all here and ready. And then the fun part and the important part, we invite you to ask them questions, open microphone question and answer. But let's start by hearing from you. When you hear scientific collaboration for the climate agenda, what comes to your mind? When you hear scientific collaboration for the climate agenda, what comes to your mind? I'm looking around the room to see if there's somebody with microphones ready to pick some answers. And my panelists, please, as the people are giving their ideas of what comes to mind, I want you to think of one word that you can think of that comes to mind when you think about scientific collaboration for climate agenda. One word. But for the people in the audience, I see already one hand. Great, I'm looking forward to hearing that one. I'd like a few more. Scientific collaboration.
Can I have 2?
Okay, you can have 2 words.
Okay, innovation and cross-sectoral partnerships.
Innovation, cross-sectoral partnerships. Anything else? I see another one, thank you. Research. Uh-huh. Yes, gentleman in the back. The person with the microphone is not moving as fast as us, so we're going to work without it. Please.
Okay.
In French, we say égalité.
Égalité. Equality. Égalité. One more? Anyone more? No? Okay, so égalité, research, cross-sectoral partnerships, creative, innovation. There was just one more over here. I like how it gets going when you want to close it. I'll take 2. The lady sitting here and the ambassador. Precision. Precision. Inclusion. Great. So we've had our first words. We are actually privileged today to have with us Ambassador Edvin Skrt, who is the Director General for Development Cooperation and Humanitarian Aid, and he is going to be sharing with us some insights from the Slovenian Foreign Ministry perspective. Welcome, Edvin.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. My answer to your initial question would be partnerships. We have to work together, and I will talk briefly about that as well. So I will hardly surprise anyone by stating that Africa is our development cooperation priority. And you can hear similar emphasis from almost all European countries. Rightly so. Africa is a geopolitical priority for Europe. Our proximity, interests, and sometimes even history bind us together. We have close economical, cultural, and geographical ties. Now, listening to Elizabeth's introductory remarks, and everyone familiar with the EU-Africa development partnerships might expect me to talk about the Global Gateway or the Africa-Europe Investment Framework or climate and energy partnerships and all initiatives aimed to Africa in achieving a robust, inclusive, environmentally friendly, transformative transformation. But I'd rather tell you a short story. I began working in international development partnerships coordination directorate a year and a half ago. Before that, I worked as a bilateral ambassador and in the EU affairs. And this field for me was quite superficial. I still remember that one night I read the strategic framework of the Slovenian development priorities and objectives more precisely and more thoroughly. We have a parliamentary framework, a resolution, and the government strategy until 2030. And I discovered again how strongly it emphasizes cooperation with Africa. And I asked myself, what can small donors like Slovenia do to assist the largest continent on this planet? Can they make an impact? After a year and a half on this position, I can assure you that the answer is yes. A small donor can make a significant impact by partnering with African countries. And how can this be achieved? So the textbook's answer would go, find a small local partners that have a deep understanding of the community's needs and are often more efficient in delivering results. Support community-driven projects such as building wells, schools, or health clinics. And this is exactly what Slovenia has been doing for almost 20 years through partnerships with Slovenian and local organizations and NGOs. So what else can a small donor do? Provide scholarships for students to attend schools and universities. Education is a powerful tool for long-term development, and we do exactly that. Donate medical supplies and equipment to rural clinics or health centers and support campaigns for vaccinations or disease prevention. We do that. During COVID-19, Slovenia was one of the biggest per capita donors of anti-COVID vaccines. Fund agricultural projects that improve food security and livelihoods, and that's why we do that's what we do through many of our projects with a touch of beekeeping and pollination agenda. As you know, an international forum on beekeeping or on pollination is going concurrently on the occasion of the World Bee Day that we observed 2 days ago. We support reforestation projects to combat deforestation and climate change. We support initiatives that protect natural resources and promote sustainable land use practices. So in general, in addition to gender equality, the environment and climate are our cross-cutting themes in development partnerships. Slovenia, as a young and vibrant country with no hidden agenda, believes that building development partnerships on an equal footing is the way to make crucial progress in achieving the key goals of Agenda 2030. In an era of geopolitical competition, demographic shifts and existential challenges, countries here in Europe and in Africa are in the same boat. We have much to learn from each other, and we must find solutions together. That's why partnerships. Slovenia places local ownership and needs at the heart of development partnerships. We have excellent Slovenia-based implementing organizations. We are particularly pleased that they strive for locally led development with their partners in Africa. It's true our activities can be modest in financial terms still, but each one of the partnership is chosen carefully based on mutual understanding, equality, solidarity, and comprehension of our partner needs. They are demand-driven and bring the knowledge and expertise of the Slovenian people, companies, NGOs, and other stakeholders. So before I leave the floor back to Elizabeth, and then I guess to Tomaž Rodič, the director of Space.SI, who will talk about our satellite technologies and about the projects we are supporting in Africa, let me just use this opportunity to invite you to look at the exhibition that is displayed here in this room, and it was prepared for the last year edition of Slovenian Development Days, and it was titled The Essence of Humanity. It could be also titled Faces of Slovenian Development Partnerships, as it is a proof of the noble mission of development partnerships we are doing. And behind them, there are always people working with people for common welfare, for common community. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I really love that people are at the center of this. I used to have a slogan, here, people matter. I'm very happy that that's true in Slovenia. I would like to now invite Tomaž Rodič. We were already told who he is, so I'm not going to introduce you twice. This is very close to my heart. Last year, he was on a panel making a presentation, and there was an audience. Out of that, what he's about to present was born. So I'm also looking forward to see what is the result of the discussions last year in real life. Welcome, Tomaž.
So thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, what I would like to do today is to present to you our project, which is, if the answer to your question would be yes, science in terms of satellite data and digital twin models for transboundary river basins. And unfortunately, I mean, she's a very good friend of mine, but she usually asks me to be very strict with time. So I apologize, I will go very quickly through the slides because I probably prepared too many. I would like to go to next slide, but this doesn't work.
It's not working.
Can you?
There.
Yeah. So Space.SI is a center of excellence for space sciences and technologies. We are part of the Copernicus Relay Center dealing with a lot of European satellites, satellite data and processing, but I hope I would be able to change this myself, because otherwise we will not go that quickly. Yeah. Sorry. Now it seems that we are both working. So in addition to that, we have developed our own small Slovenian satellite, and I will tell you the story how it works in combination with big European satellite systems called Sentinel. And as I mentioned, what we did, we launched the satellite in space a little bit less than 4 years ago. And it's quite an agile satellite that can follow river basins, you can follow coastal areas, and as you can see, we can monitor what's going on, especially around rivers. The first application that we had was actually Socha River, from source to the discharge to the Adriatic Sea, and this is one of the nice pictures that I like, where you can see that from one image only, you can see how the river flows, how sediments are deposited, what grows in the fields, what is going on in urban environments, and this is only one picture, one photo taken from our satellite, but we can make many of them following the river from the source to the sea. And information that we provide are actually related to many different indicators related to food, water, energy, also transport, and so on. So one satellite image can provide many data for multisectorial applications. And what we are doing with that, we are trying to build, I'm very unfortunate that the light is too high. I wanted to show how we map the satellite data on 3D configurations, and then we derive numerical models, which we call digital twins of ecosystems, in order to model interactions between water, soil, vegetation under given meteorological conditions. And I believe that this data can help a lot to understand our environment and ecosystem interactions in kind of multi-physics way. Unfortunately, Slovenia was hit by several disasters in the last couple of years, so we responded to forest fires in Slovenia, and from multispectral imagery, we detected also damages, and now we can follow how this proceeds. We were confronted with severe floods, with huge damages, and also our satellite responded to those areas, and we were trying to build. Sorry, I don't know why. How this. We were trying to model also the ecosystems and understanding how the floods happened in Slovenia through the digital twin models. Unfortunately, again, I think there's too much light. If there would be a little bit more atmosphere, you can see that we can see the damages to ecosystem from the space. Made to the vegetation. We are able to follow history of what was going on in the environment from week to week before the event, and how the ecosystem is developing now. And this is related to vegetation, to soil moisture, and so on. And there were a lot of interactions between land and sea. We had landslides influencing flows. And unfortunately, that was not the only disaster. Just a week before that, there were severe storms that hit a lot of our trees, which ended up in rivers together with some agricultural products. And that meant that it wasn't only water. There were a lot of things in the water that destroyed and helped our infrastructure. Our environment in Slovenia is changing a lot. So we are studying how in last century the digital twin models have changed environment, and you can see the throughput of water is quite different now when we don't have snow anymore in mountains, and the throughput in April is not as high anymore because snow immediately ends up in rivers. So the top figure and the lower are actually comparison over the last 60 years in actually my hometown. So you can see that it's not only me that changed in the last 60 years, but also environment changed quite drastically. And also the frequency of those kind of events is becoming higher and higher. And in the last century, you can see that more and more frequent floods occur. Now what we are trying to do is to understand how this will affect our future, which means that the digital model that we are calibrating now is put into the context of global climate changes, but we are looking at the local environments. Really would like to understand how this locally acts. And yeah, this is now, I don't have time now to go through the studies that we did in Slovenia for Koroška, but I will show you something that happened very quick in Kenya. we knew that this kind of models will be beneficial and needed in future, and we made a commitment to United Nations that we are going to develop cost-effective satellite technologies to deal with local problems that environments face. And this is our commitment that you can read at the United Nations page. It was highly regarded as one of the best 3 commitments made. And soon after, even the president of Kenya, together with our president, discussed at the United Nations how the science could be applied to this kind of things. At that time, we didn't know yet, but actually just after that, at the beginning of this year, we launched a project together with Kenya that will also treat this for the Kenyan ecosystems. We joined forces with Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology from Nairobi. But this is supported also from our Center for International Cooperation, who is acting as a financing. Ministry of Foreign Affairs is supporting that in the bigger framework of Team Europe. And there is also, we have a partner for digital twin models. And I will later on also Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations is joining forces with us. So what we did at the beginning, we looked at the different ecosystems. We analyzed approximately 9 of them, but we really wanted to select some of the best examples that we can cope with, and we have selected 3 test locations related to flash floods, to more flat areas as well. And what I'm going to show you now is just very briefly, just 2 of them that we have set up for our studies. One of them is actually very similar configuration of the terrain as we have here in Slovenia. This is close to Narok, where you can see now the geographic position is there. Now, what Olopito School has with Narok Bridge in common, I will try to explain you very briefly, but you can see that this Olopito School that we visited and Narok Bridge are actually highly related, both in local and global environment, while because we have a meteorological station, or better say, Jomo Kenyatta University is working with local school to collect local data in their local environment about meteorological conditions. And down the stream, in this watershed, there is a Narok Bridge very prone to flash floods, which means that whenever rain actually falls on that area indicated by blue color, this water actually accumulates over the whole landscape and actually ends up in Narok. In this case, it is, we are using Olopito School, although this is, I believe, secondary school. We are collecting data locally, not only on daily basis, but actually on every couple of minutes. And we have access from Ljubljana here to the current developments there. And this is the Narok Bridge that I showed you before. Maybe the lower picture that I showed is a very innocent one. It doesn't show much, but actually during flooding is quite a risky zone. And what we are doing then from that is actually we are developing from satellite data digital twin models that tell us everything about the configuration of the terrain, vegetation, infrastructure in the city, and so on. And actually what we are doing then is you can see that from this configuration on that bridge, very local environment, we can model how much water actually goes in and what is the amount of water that falls into the complete region actually fills that area. We have built that model, just a kind of a prototype, just by the end of April, and actually at the day when we did that, okay, this is maybe just a little bit of enlarged image which collects this data, but actually floods happened in Kenya in real time. Actually, that was only a couple of weeks ago that more than 200 people up to now lost their lives in floods in Kenya. Unfortunately, that was a very dramatic situation there, not only by this, but because also the tropical cyclone followed this. Fortunately, that didn't add to the common floods. But what we are trying to explain with our models is how that works on macro scale. So I can see that you are a bit losing with time, but now the question is how a situation like what's on the right, which looks very innocent, ends up in a drastic situation with big floods. And we model this. Sorry. Sorry, that doesn't work, but that's really how we explain how this all water actually comes to the city and surprises. This is just maybe half an hour after the rain started. That is the disaster that is happening. In Slovenia, we call it hudurnik. And now just the second example, which I don't have that much time to explain, but because Elizabeth is from Kisumu, I will you know that Lake Victoria is rising over 3 meters over last couple of decades. There is the diagram, what is happening there. And actually you can see that a lot of things are flooding there. Hotels, schools, infrastructure, and everything like that. And what we are trying to do again is to see how the rivers connecting the lake actually interact with the lake itself, and how the water that now, if it's relatively flat and if the water rises 3 meters in a couple of decades, you can imagine how much water has pushed animals into the urban cities, and actually that's happening there. Now you have interactions between hippos and people going to work in the morning. Things like that. You can see that real estate infrastructure is affecting. So we are actually collecting social and economic impacts now, and who knows how to predict what will happen in the next 10 or 20 years with that, but this is what we are trying to achieve. Unfortunately, this is an image from space that would indicate like how this was affected by very recent flood. We have collected a lot of data now, and we will be using this for many months in advance now to explain how to calibrate our digital twin to that event and what are the impacts. In Ljubljana, we have now a kind of control room that gathers all the data, and we will transfer this in terms not only of scientific data, but in terms of art. This is the statue that is going to go to Kenya, and we are going to show how our scientific results will be transferred to technology and arts to environment. We'll also in interaction with business and government in the, but now I think I need to stop. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Tomaž. I think that is actually a real practical example of how collaboration can work. And I think it's science, technology, art, governance, quite interesting. One thing, when he said, you know, people are interacting with hippos on their way to work, I saw some people smiling. The mammal that causes the most deaths in Africa is the hippopotamus. We're not killed by lions. We're killed by hippopotamuses. That animal is quite dangerous. So for those people who are smiling, it's not a good thing to meet a hippopotamus on your way to work. It's not a beautiful safari. At that moment, you are in a lot of trouble. I have been feeling quite lonely up here, and so I'm very excited to be inviting some special people to join me. I'm going to give them a moment to come and find their seats. They're quite marked, so I think Ibrahim from the University of Ljubljana, you're sitting right next to me. Professor Majdič is sitting right next to Ibrahim. Professor Klopper, you get the next seat. There's an easier way on my left. Professor Kayihura, you do get a seat. And Professor Palmowski. So welcome, and now I'm not so lonely, so I'm going to abandon these microphones and sit down so we can have a sit-down conversation. I hope this one's working. Not yet. Now it is. Great. So very quickly, I had an assignment for you to write one word. I hope you wrote it big enough. This is show and tell. the fun part for school. So I'm very quickly going to test the microphones that you have next to you. Let's see if they work. Let's see if we did our homework. I'm going to start at the extreme left for me, right for the audience, and come towards me. If you can please tell us what your name is, what you do, one thing you're passionate about, and which word you chose and why you chose it.
So my name is Jan Palmowski. I'm Secretary General of the Guild. We represent 22 universities across Europe, and I'm delighted that the University of Ljubljana is one of them, almost since the creation. And I'm passionate about the work I do. And my word is actually a number. I hope that's okay. It's 3.8 and 78. I can explain later what that means.
Why 3.8 and 78?
Because Africa is the most affected continent by climate change, but only 3.8% of all global funding towards climate change research goes into is on Africa, and of that amount, 78% is spent on the global north. And that is a figure established by colleagues from Stellenbosch and others.
78% of 3.8%.
Goes to the global north, so in other words, only 22% of 3.8% goes to Africa.
Africa only gets less than 1%. Quick mathematics. Let's hear who's sitting next to you.
Next to him is Kayihura Muganga, Didas, and I'm the acting Vice Chancellor of University of Rwanda. And I happen to be so much interested in the word partnership. Partnership because whatever we do, universities are meant to, of course, education, but also a lot to do with research. And research is more valuable when there is more of partnerships. That's the word.
Thank you. The word partnership comes up again. There's a match. Perfect. Who's sitting next to Kayihura?
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hester Klopper, and I'm from Stellenbosch University in South Africa, where I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor responsible for strategy, global and corporate affairs of the university. And my word was actually quadruple helix partnerships. Wow. And the reason for that, of course, is that partnerships is really across all of the different sectors, multi-layered. And what I'm passionate about is really the role that universities play in terms of the role of intellectuals as nation builders.
Quadruple helix partnerships. Yeah. Every day we learn something new. Tomaž, that's the word.
Okay, thank you. I choose a simpler word. Actually, it's 2 words. I hope I'll be forgiven, but my 2 words are global change. I think we need a global change. It's part of connecting with what my previous speakers said. We are facing very serious global problems, and we need a global change in a way that scientific community should lead the change, but we should convince the politicians that the change is needed. We should convince them that we should stop talking. Like in the morning session, there was COPD mentioned, and I think there are big meetings with a lot of big words, but not much practical comes out of it. And scientific community has been at the forefront of leading the society throughout the history, and I think we have to assume that role again, and we have to convince the politicians that I'm convinced that we have enough, or we will develop enough knowledge, we have enough resources to tackle the problems but we need the political will, and scientific community has to do this, but we can do this together, joint, and force the global change.
Thank you. I like this. I was told this once by a friend of mine, that actually the technical solutions are there, but we have to have the political discussions. And who's sitting next to me?
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Ibrahim Elrefaey. I am a researcher at the University of Ljubljana, the Faculty of Chemistry and Chemical Technology. Since I'm here, I'm also representing the being an African, an Egyptian, and worked quite a bit of time in knowledge transfer. So maybe my main topic, and I will always be stressing about that, one of the main reasons or main contribution in the green transition and sustainability is providing some sustainable, practical, integrated solutions that can be done. So maybe if I will have the time, I would share with you a couple of examples of real-life examples of building some integrated solution which is sustainable and doable.
Great. And if we don't have time to talk about it during the panel, I want everybody to look for Ibrahim and ask him what are these practical solutions, because we need them. Sure. Okay. I'm going to start by asking a question to Kayihura. We agreed we're going to be informal on this panel. I know that you're a member of the executive committee of ARUA.
Yes.
And I know that there has been some collaboration between ARUA, which is an association of African universities, and the Guild, which is an association of European universities. What is your experience of this collaboration? What's going well? And what could be done better?
Thank you very much. Well, there is a collaboration between, for those who are not familiar with ARUA, ARUA is an alliance of research, I should say research-intensive universities in Africa that aim to enhance research, applied research, responding to day-to-day issues, challenges in Africa, but at the same time doing capacity building in postgraduate studies, of course linked with research as well. And of course, the Guild has almost, if not exactly, the same purpose that is from Europe. And so the two have come together. They are trying to negotiate their partnership and commit together to responding to global issues. Of course, research. So we may start with science. Science is the common language. Research is what brings them together. Global challenges are always there, and what you would think that is national or continental, it turns out to be a global issue. We enjoyed the talks since morning where they are talking about climate change. What is done against climate change, to endanger climate here may not only affect here, but can as well affect Africa, can as well affect the US, China, and elsewhere. And so when we all come together, we can address such challenges and sustainably, and thus promoting sustainability and global responses to global issues. We are talking about climate change, yes. In health, you saw what befell us a few years ago, the pandemic, COVID, and some people thought it would only hit severely Africa because of the vulnerability, but it turned out that it is not just something that can attack just one specific area. It cuts across, it went across the whole world, and some unexpected areas were affected most. And so that's one other example of how collaborative efforts can respond to global issues for sustainability, for sustainable solutions. And so the ARUA and the Guild are coming together to think about how to address those very big challenges, global issues, and yes, empower each other, build each other, but at the end of it, the mutual benefit will be registered. And it is the two alliances are building from a wealth of experience from individual countries, partnering with other countries from either side, all individual universities from Europe and individual universities from Africa. So drawing from all that, we are now into those two alliances, working on a very good list of clusters that are really going to be responding to very serious global issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take it very quickly to Hester and say, I know you're one of the universities that are within this alliance that is benefiting from this collaboration. How is this collaboration enabling you to position your university as a center of excellence?
Well, at Stellenbosch University, in our current cycle, the strategic cycle, we've made it very clear, and I always say we are boldly ambitious in terms of being Africa's leading research-intensive university. That's our long-term vision. And we have really deliberately done this through either comprehensive partnerships with universities, mainly on bilateral originally, but then subsequently also now working within different networks. So when ARUA was established in 2016 and Stellenbosch was part of the original genesis of ARUA, it became very clear to us that somehow on the continent we had to work together. Often we just work with what is referred to the global north, but really unlocking those partnerships has been critical for us. So in ARUA, what became very evident is finding areas of collaboration. And originally we established what was referred to the centers of excellence. And Stellenbosch was leading one of those centers, which is in renewable energy. Now, moving forward a couple of years later, we partnered with the Guild, and that really brought about the opportunity then, but in this partnership now, to then move towards the goal that we've set ourselves, and that is to establish clusters of excellence. So it's really taking it to the next level, but what is critical and what we've already seen in these partnerships, so even between ARUA and the Guild, is also working with not only now bilateral but multilateral partners. For example, we've got a joint PhD program between Stellenbosch University, Karolinska, and Makerere. Just with our partner, like University of Groningen, we've now have 14 joint PhD programs. So it's that type of really commitment that I've seen really builds the research focus, and that's been the focus for Stellenbosch. The spin-off that we see from these partnerships is what I would want to call the capacity for science. Really capacity development, how to manage funds, how do we build supervision capabilities, how do we build infrastructure, how do we share it across the continent, but also with our partners. So I'm really looking forward to the next phase of the ARUA Guild partnership, where we've now established 20 of these clusters of excellence. Stellenbosch is either leading or involved in 5, intricately involved in the renewable energy green transition, but equally so with University of Rwanda and some of our other partners around data science, computational thinking, to actually use the data in terms of moving the research agenda forward.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Gregor and ask, is it the same from a European perspective? I think we've had the African perspective, but does it translate?
I think we are at the very beginning of this, what I will develop into excellent and fruitful partnership. We will need, again, more political support. Within the Guild, we are pushing for more support from the European Union for these partnerships, because I truly believe that such partnership could change the world. Africa is the continent of the future, but Africa is also lacking capacities in higher education, in research, and what Europe could really do, and what, from my perspective, would really make a meaningful change for Africa, is to help them build these capacities. We know that we are discussing now within the Guild also the program with the MasterCard to donate scholarship for PhD students, and there is a problem in African university with lack of capacity for mentorship for PhD students, and this is where we could help them. But what is most important is that we have to go there, we have to help African universities, but on their terms. We shouldn't go there with the aim, we will teach you how you should do it. We should work on equal partners, listen to them, listen to you, and develop programs together that will be beneficial for everybody. And through this, we can address many global challenges that the world is facing today, from climate change, demographic changes, increasing gap between global north and global south, as Jan mentioned with these percentages, and this could be one of the most important things that Europe could do for global development, I think. So yeah, it's very important, but we'll have to, I think this is just a start, what I hope will become very important issue in the future years.
Okay. Jan, this comes back to you. Supporting us on an equal basis, listening, is that something that you can see the Guild doing, and how can you strengthen that?
So thank you for the question, and I want to in part also pick up on what my colleagues have said and maybe expand on that. So as Gregor said, we are at the beginning of this, and we have worked very hard to co-develop a joint research agenda amongst our clusters. So what is special about what we're doing is that we're using the policy framework provided by the European Union and the African Union and we've given, and our universities have then put a 10-year commitment, minimum commitment behind this for institutional support. And we've asked our researchers to now put some flesh to the bones. So what does this mean in practice in terms of science? And they've now developed a scientific agenda, and that's what they're working towards together. And they've done that in the spirit of equity. They've co-developed these agenda. It's not dominated by one side. What is, I think, so important, and it's been raised this morning as well, and we've heard it a little bit this afternoon, the reference to the Global Gateway. So we've had, this is a still relatively new EU strategy. It's very important, and it was, and as part of the Global Gateway, we have an AU-EU innovation agenda. And that really articulates how one of the core pillars of the Global Gateway, which is research and education, how that can actually be operationalized. And it's a document agreed between the African Union and the European Union. And what is so remarkable about that document is that it really changes the way we think about science, because it focuses on the long-term agenda. It brings together scientific excellence and capacity building, all for the purpose of societal transformation. And that document we absolutely subscribe to 100%. And we've just seen that the MasterCard Foundation is investing in this as well. So they're giving 1,000 PhD-ships per year over a period of 10 years to Arua. These will be Africa-registered PhD students, but European partners will be closely involved in the co-supervision. What we now need is the policymakers not just to rely on other organizations to fulfill their vision, but for them also to really think through what can new instruments be. And there are two ways they can do this. One of them is for the EU really to think through what new instruments it can develop, for instance, in DG International Partnerships to come together with research innovation. Another way is to really operationalize in a really more effective way the Team Europe approach, whereby European governments and national member states coordinate better and more effectively how they support Africa. It was wonderful to hear the story from Slovenia just earlier on, and the case study of Slovenia, and it's really phenomenal to see that generally when you look at the individual nation states in Europe, the individual states really do speak with one voice of this, so I do think there's huge potential.
Thank you. I'm looking at the audience to see, does this resonate? Does it make sense to you? Just by show of hands. It only resonates with one person. Wow. Okay. Great. I see someone in the front row that I'd like to throw a question to. So if a microphone can please be brought to the front. We have with us Audrey from the Global Diplomacy Lab, and I see her name right at the bottom there. And I would like to ask you, Audrey, from your experience in the Global Diplomacy Lab, are there lessons you've learned from that context that could be transferable to this context we're talking about?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And quite a number of gems I've actually picked up that have already been mentioned. And for me, I will start with the comment that you said, it's not the technology or the techniques that we don't know, it's actually the political will. And I think this is where the Global Diplomacy Lab comes in, because the Global Diplomacy Lab seriously believes that if we want to actually bridge diplomatic relations, then science is very important for these, and especially when we're dealing with global challenges. So a couple of observations I made in this conversation, and I'll just name 3 of them because I know I also have only 1.5 minutes. But firstly, I think, and this actually sings to the chorus here, for science and technology to actually have an impact, we need collaboration. And we need collaboration with diplomats, we need collaborations also with politicians, with industry, with social and natural scientists, and civil society. Those have to come to the table, yeah? And we're saying that this is not just about consensus building on the challenges and solutions, but we're just thinking that they also shape science diplomacy and processes that go beyond state-centric frameworks. And this is actually what we need. Secondly, when we look at the term or how we define early career researchers, I think looking or understanding the different education and career paths between Africa and Europe is actually key to consider. So by looking at early career researchers and defining them more broadly to include scholars at undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate levels, and also including young professionals and practitioners, this would actually support having a more inclusive representation of African scientists in national and global policy and decision-making processes. So this might actually give us this impetus to close this gap of where research in Africa is actually contributing to global policies. Now, thirdly, and in relation to my point about early career researchers, I think we must also consider the barriers, for engaging these early career researchers. And I'll just mention two because there are many. The fact is, unless we actually recognize early career scientists as key stakeholders in decision-making processes, then they won't participate in science policy interfaces, yeah? And they would also not build the capacity or the skills and knowledge and know-how of where their research can actually impact policy making. Now, in Africa, we also know that there are insufficient spaces for exchanges between early career scientists and policymakers. So this actually basically creates a barrier for having science being a vehicle for social inclusion in society. So for us at the Global Diplomacy Lab, we're actually interested in collaborations and partnerships that want to actually bridge this research policy gap by considering diverse actors in science and technology, of collaboration frameworks, and addressing these barriers to engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. And that's a perfect segue. I see some hands already going up, and I definitely want to take questions, and I'm also looking at my clock, so I know I will take questions. But I just want to give Ibrahim one moment as an early stage researcher, because she said something about early stage researchers.
Yeah.
Would you like to add something small before I take the questions? And I will start with your question.
Okay, maybe I will just talk about a researcher in our laboratory, in the Faculty of Chemistry. We apply, as an example, we prepare for the green transition, of course, and we have to apply a few standards and guidelines about the green transition, like minimizing the waste, not to use some harsh chemicals if we can, and to apply, as an example, life cycle assessment. When we even published a new research about the 9 principles of the green transition, especially applying these life cycle assessment in our work, and now we are applying in all our research. So this is the part that we can apply a few guidelines and a few standards in this regard. However, you know that we have a special issue here when you go into practice. Sometimes the policies are there, the guidelines are there, but you have to deviate a little bit because that's the way when you go into the practical part. Maybe I just need to mention that you can do a lot of work with a small collaboration, and you can expand that. You can make a small example, a prototype, and you can apply a huge amount of work and policies to build something bigger. As an example, we have now built a hub called the Egyptian Slovenian Hub for Heritage Science. And we have a lot of work and achievements in accordance with this hub. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I have a dream, no, I can see some good opportunity to build something similar between African and European countries, to build a real hub for research and technology. And that's my dream, if we can say so.
I think you're talking to the right people with the capacity to make the dream happen.
Of course.
I saw some questions already, and I want to make sure that we take at least one round of questions. So I'm going to try and collect about 4 questions. We'll start with the gentleman in the front. I would like to invite the panelists. In case you don't understand French, there are translation equipment somewhere within your reach.
Merci bien.
And it's channel
Je vais vous inviter à prendre vos écouteurs parce que je vais parler en français. Henri Okemba, ambassadeur du Congo en Slovénie. Alors j'ai été particulièrement interpellé par le professeur Palmowski avec l'élément qu'il nous a apporté. Si pour toute la recherche, l'Afrique ne bénéficie que de 3,8% et que dans ces 3,8%, seulement 22% arrivent en Afrique, on est en droit de se poser la question de savoir si tous les objectifs que nous projetons, les grandes ambitions que nous avons, si tout cela, finalement, risque de n'être que des vues d'esprit. Parce que sans moyens, nous le savons tous ici, sans moyens, rien ne peut se faire. Et sans moyens, dans le domaine scientifique, dans le domaine de la connaissance et de l'innovation, l'Afrique risque de devenir toujours en arrière. Et je crois que c'est peut-être l'occasion d'interpeller les politiques. Il n'y a pas que les Européens, mais d'interpeller aussi les politiques africains. Il faudrait qu'il y ait une grande conscience qui se développe au niveau des politiques africains pour que les moyens soient aussi apportés afin de permettre à ce que les ambitions que nous avons pour le monde, pour la planète, pour nos universités, puissent véritablement se concrétiser. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Do we have any other questions or comments? I can always ask the panelists to keep talking, but I would like to hear from you. I can't see behind. There's somebody standing in my line of vision. So I know there's somebody. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I understand I'm a black man, so if you don't see me, I understand. Yeah, thank you very much. Please permit me to deviate a bit from the issue of diplomacy. I want to go into something a bit more practical, and it has to do with educational issue here in Slovenia. I came here to study. I got my admission in 2015. Before I could manage to come to Slovenia to study, it's like, I think I was able to come 2016. The reason is this. I am from Nigeria. My country, as big as it is, we don't have Slovenia embassy. And then we have to go to Egypt. In fact, for almost more than a year, I was trying to get visa to go to Egypt. It's like what we used to say here in Slovenia, Mitiane Mogoshe. Mission impossible. They couldn't give me visa to go to Egypt. So, sir, I think I will want to direct my question to Professor Gregor, the Rector of University of Ljubljana. Mm-hmm. How can you help students from Africa to come directly to study here? If maybe they can get like short-term visa, a program that will just run for like 3 months so that they can come, it will really help. As we speak now, we have one guy, a number of people in Egypt They couldn't even get visa to come here to study. They are there. I have a lot of people that always get across to me. They get admission, but they couldn't leave their country to come here. So how are you going to
challenges accessing visas.
The visa to come here to study.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before I go back to my panelists? Because as I go to them,
can I comment on that?
I know we had thousands of questions, but as we're commenting, I think we're also going to be wrapping up because I'm aware of the time. So any questions or comments? Okay, great. So I invite you to comment, and then we can take a last round of comments from the panelists.
Thank you for raising these questions. I've been dealing with this for 2.5 years since I became a rector of University of Ljubljana. We have a huge problem with foreign students bringing them to Slovenia. Actually, in our strategy of national higher education strategy, it's written that we will put more pressure, more emphasis on internationalization of universities, connect more to the world. But I'm fully aware of this problem. We had several meetings with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Public Administration, trying to solve these issues. But unfortunately, we don't move much further. I guess there are some colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today here. Maybe they can answer what we can do. There was one concrete suggestion that we made regarding this trip to the Cairo, because I know from every African country, if you want to come to Slovenia on a student visa or a working visa as a researcher, you have to go to Cairo. Why not? Cannot do this procedure at the foreign embassies from the European Union? Why they cannot make agreement with because I know some of the diplomatic missions could be done with the other embassies from European Union in these countries, but not in this particular case. So I don't have I wish I would have the answer, but I don't have, and this is the issue that is really bothering us at the University of Ljubljana.
Okay, so we have identified a headache that needs some solutions. I'm just going to go around with my panel and ask you to give one statement as we close. If you had to leave this audience with one message, what would your message be? I'm going to start with Hester, ladies first.
So I will most probably conclude with my word that I wrote down, and that is the quadruple helix partnership. I think the time has arrived that if we really are sincere about working together on a global agenda, it is going to take an effort between governments, civil society, universities, and also business and industry. However, being here today as a university representative, I want to most probably say our biggest challenge is to make sure that we can provide, especially business and industry, with the value proposition of why they should partner with universities. And for Africa, my experience has been, if we look in terms of funding, and the challenge of funding is making a differentiation between what is investment funds and what is like aid funding. Our continent has really become dependent on the aid funding, but how do we change that into real investment? And my conclusion is I don't see a way forward unless we get all the partners around the table to work collectively.
Okay, quadruple helix partnerships. Thank you. So I get the point that you're trying to introduce this as a solution to our 3.8% of 22 point something percent of 3.8%. Okay, yeah, that's a hard number to deal with. I'll go to Kayihura. What would you like to leave us with?
Yes, I don't know whether we picked from each other, but I think she saw my notes.
The professors are cheating.
Prof, I totally agree with you, but it is not surprising because even when we take what I said in the opening and what she said and what he said and what they said and what His Excellency said, the ambassador, it's all about collaboration. And as introduced with partnership, collaboration. And this is not going to be just for any individual. Just like what we said, it requires each and everyone to get involved. But I will emphasize that even though civil society will be coming in, private sector, but more importantly, governments need to commit. And I'm glad the excellencies who are here should know that even when we are doing, from an academic perspective, we are doing our efforts. That's why we are having these alliances, working collaboratively together to responding to, but they can only do when they have enough resources, just like His Excellency said. And how are they going to get those resources? Yes, one would say we'll go to philanthropists, we go to whichever source of finances, but first, let our politicians, our governments commit to working on that. Look, in Africa, governments need to invest more into research to respond to the local issues. As I said earlier, what would be called local issue is equally a regional but also a global issue. If we can all commit, governments invest into research, civil society will join, private sector will do the same, and at the end of it, us researchers, universities are there, we have those. And by the way, it will respond to a number of issues. We have researchers in Africa who flee from Africa to Europe, not because they are poor and nourished or poor, but because they don't have how to use their brains. And they'll go elsewhere to look on how to. And why is that? Because we have not invested enough into research. The infrastructure, the environment doesn't favor him to stay in keeping into research and trying to respond to existing challenges. And so, if we can all commit to this, governments invest, civil societies, private sector, all investing into that, and getting good, people from the West, from the North, who are willing to support us, in Africa, they will be supporting from what is already there. And coming back to what you just talked, I think Prof talked about aid and investment.
Yes.
And this, we've seen for so many years, Africa has been having support. Like you invite, we send students to Europe, they come and study, but when they get back home, they cannot really fit because there is no infrastructure. Now, what has been happening in the last few years, I take an example of the University of Rwanda. We have always been sending so many students across the world, but now we have kind of tried to change our approach, and now we are convincing the world to invest in us at home. Invest into infrastructure, invest into training locally from there, such that our approaches become more relevant, but also building the capacities at home, which will enable these researchers to stay and always keep committed to responding to issues that are there, even when it requires supporting on continental or global issues, but let it come from the Rwandan perspective, for example, or South African perspective, or Egyptian.
Context-specific
solutions.
Perfect. Thank you. I think you're speaking music to Jan's ears. We had a long conversation about this. Gregor, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Thank you. I will conclude that we are facing the global problems. Our world is in danger. Climate changes are threatening the existence of our species. I always say we will not destroy the world. The world will survive, the nature will recover, but we might change the world so it will become inhabitable for our children and grandchildren. And we can solve all these issues only together. And for that, I will continue from what I said before and from what Didas just said. Yeah, we have to build Africa capacities. And maybe just two things that I didn't mention before in my previous speaking. When I talk about this, how important it is to help to build the capacity so the academic community will develop in African countries. I often, in Brussels or in other politicians, we get the answer, oh yeah, there are student exchanges, but student exchanges are not the answer, as Didas just very funny say. But it's not only that they cannot go back because there is no infrastructure, but also the best one will stay in Europe. They will not go back to the African countries. So we're causing the brain drain. Another answer is I sometimes get is, oh yeah, the online courses for the African students. what you will do with the paper from University of Ljubljana or University of Oxford in Africa if you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the infrastructure. And that's why I think it's so important that we have to help build Africa the infrastructure, and for that we have to go to Africa, European University, with the aim of helping building the academic community that will then work on the research, on the science diplomacy, on the public opinion, and through these measures then we will be able to change the world, to assume the position that universities should have, the higher education should have in the world, leading the society and make the global change that we are in dire need of.
Global change. I think that was your word at the beginning.
Yes.
Jan, you get the opportunity to close it for us.
Just very briefly, I would first of all urge all of us, including policymakers, to take our universities seriously. I've been hugely, hugely impressed whenever I've been in Africa to be in these universities in Arua and others that are deep in the middle of vast demographic change that we cannot even begin to imagine in Europe, and the ways in which they're embracing this and really thinking about this creatively and with a sense of urgency should give us a lot of comfort and hope. And and ending on a positive note, we have a unique opportunity in Europe and Africa. We have two intercontinental organizations, the EU and the AU. No two other continents have this. Mm-hmm. And so I would just urge us to use the structures that we have. I know it's difficult, but we have it. To really create a framework for dialogue, and not just for dialogue, but also for action, bringing on our universities and developing trust in our enthusiasm, in our long-term capacity and willingness to deliver for the societal good that Gregor's talking about, and everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Quick question, by show of hands, was this worth it? Oh. Thank you all for being with us, for listening, and for engaging with us. I would like to thank the speakers who actually didn't get to stay on stage. Thank you for joining this session, and the panelists. Without you, this would not be what it is. Thank you all. I'm not quite sure what happens now. We take a break, and you want everybody to be back at what time?
We will now take a short coffee break.
I was actually looking for
Program in 10 minutes.
10 minutes. So if everybody can be back at past, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.